Do you guys know the meme, Notice Me Senpai? It's basically from anime where someone desperately wants to be acknowledged by a person they admire, often an upperclassman or mentor. So this is my kind of attempt to do Notice Me Senpai, but with doctors, right? Because I've done these debt payoff demonstrations for about 3 years online, and I've had accountants, lawyers, federal government workers, people in those professions commenting and sending me emails, but I've never had a doctor as far as I'm aware. So I'm just going to keep making doctor videos until the YouTube algorithm somehow propagates this video to a doctor and they somehow see it, and then they'll let me know if this is stupid or not. Yes, senpai, please notice me. Okay? Okay. So that's what we're going to do today. Pay off debt, assuming we're a doctor. And the average doctor salary is pretty good, right? They go through what 10 plus years of school. And if you ever read economics books by Milton Friedman, one of the criticisms that he has about the American Medical Association is that the whole medical system is like kind of like a guild to like weed out people, kind of like organic chemistry in like your freshman year. And then, so as you weed out more people, then the wages of the people who made it through the system have been increased just by basic supply and demand. So that's why they make a lot of money, right? You could be the most skilled person, but if there's too many of you, your wage or your value goes down. That's just how economics works, right? But anyways, let's assume we're a doctor with $12,685.69 or 89 cents, and we have $13,000 of expenses with negative $477.40 left over, right? Let's take a look at all the debt that we have. We have 10 credit cards, an auto loan, a student loan, and a mortgage. And on top of that, we got $3,000 of personal expenses that we have to pay for. So even if we're debt free, we still need to pay $3,000 for expenses, right? And what we're going to do is pay off debt. We'll call it velocity debt payoff method. What about that, right? We used to call it velocity method. We used to call it another forbidden word that we're not allowed to use anymore, but we'll call it the velocity debt payoff method. And so, two questions. Number one is, do we need to make more money, right? And the second question is, can we just change how we do things and increase our cash flow? Okay. So, what if we made the same income, same exact income, had the same exact expenses, and then we had absolutely nothing in our checking and savings, and we were very intentional about this. So the difference between this column and this column here, same income, same expenses, but we're being very intentional about not saving money. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to increase this number called cash flow, which is the amount that our debt gets paid off, because our default is not that we're actively working to pay off debt. That's just the normal state of things, right? And so what we're going to do is put all of our money into something called a line of credit. So what's a line of credit? It's basically a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay back, and then use it over and over again. Okay, and so yeah, that's a line of credit. And so we're going to assume we have access to a $200,000 home equity line of credit, and what we're going to do is move some debt into it to increase our cash flow. And let me go ahead and reset this. So, spoiler alert, we paid all of our debt in about 9 years. So, what we're going to do is we're going to rank our debts using something called the cash flow index, right? So, this is just going to be the debt amount divided by the monthly payment. Debt amount divided by monthly payment. And then we're going to do this for all of our debts and then just rank our debts that way so that we know which debts to pay off first, because a small number means we get a lot of bang for our buck in terms of cash flow for paying off debt, whereas a high number means that we don't get a lot of bang for a buck, right? So we get very low amount of cash flow for to pay off lots of debt. So what would you rather do? Pay someone $430,000 for only $2,000 of cash flow, or $65,000 for about $2,000 of cash flow, or even more, a little bit more, right? I would only pay 65 for that amount rather than the 430, which is why we tackle on these low numbers first. And so how much debt is this? Is it 5, 8, 15, 27, 30, 30, 7, 10, 35, 12, 15. And then I'm going to go ahead and sum this up. So it's going to be 164 grand, 164 grand of credit card debt. And so guess what happens when we move this 164 grand into a line of credit, okay? Well, all these payments go to zero. Not they go to zero, and then our cash flow magically increases to $4,683.31 without making more money. See, you thought you were a broke doctor right here, but what was happening is that the bank was just draining your life force, right? Now, here's the catch. So this is the chicken and the egg scenario. You will never get a free and clear line of credit if you ever need the money, because banks don't lend money to people who need it. Now, doctors may be an exception because, if I type in physician loans, banks like physicians, right? There's a physician's bank, physician's loan for doctors, right? And then, they got one doctor loans by Bank of America, okay? Physician loans from Liberty Federal Credit Union Mortgage. Look at this. They'll 100% finance up to $1 million, even if you just began your residency. That's crazy. Okay. But that's because you probably don't need as much money as, let's say, your average person's broke, right? But we'll assume for now that the bank won't lend you money if you're negative $477.40. And again, we're going to use a line of credit. We're not going to use a loan. My point of demonstrating this is that, hey, banks look at physicians more favorably, but we're not going to take out a loan because this won't work with a loan. Okay. So banks don't lend money to people who need it. So you got to get the money before you ever need it. And the reason we demonstrate it with the free and clear line of credit is that it makes the demonstration so much easier. And if you wanted to see more realistic scenarios, that's all behind a 99-cent paywall. Right? Okay, so now let's go ahead and do this and do the final step of the strategy. And what is it? It's called the ultimate step of not saving money, which is you put your entire paycheck, there's $12,685.89 into the line of credit, take your expenses out, which is the 8 grand, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. Right? So after every single month, the balance should go down by $4,683.31. Okay? Now, think about this. When you were in this situation, you were negative checking, literally negative. And now we're kind of seeing a light to debt freedom. Yeah, we're seeing the light that, hey, we don't need to go to no Squid Game to pay off our debts. Okay? Because a lot of people, and this is how I feel nowadays, is that a lot of people are in a very desperate situation, which is why a lot of people are getting they're getting scammed because there's too many people who feel like they need to make short-term gains and not think about the long-term consequence. But it's happening a lot lately because a lot of people are desperate, right? Okay, so now the final step is you put your entire paycheck into the line of credit, take your expenses out, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to show you how you calculate this minus 4683.31. And then you take the average daily balance. Oopsie, that's not the average daily balance. Average daily balance multiplied by the interest rate and then divide by 12. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that the approximate debt payoff is in 40 months. Okay, so 40 months. Okay, so this is going to be 5 plus, or that was 164K. Yeah, 164K of credit card debt. And then we'll go ahead and copy and paste, right? Copy and paste. Okay. And then now we just have, 3 more loans. We got this huge student loan, 220,000. We got a pretty big mortgage. I think, it's not $1 million mortgage. And, I don't know, even if I were a physician, I feel like this is a trap. 100% financing up to $1 million, but this no PMI is pretty sweet. 100% up to $1 million. Should I do it? Should I do it 100% up to $1 million? I got to go to, do I have to go to med school? That's a pretty sweet deal, though. Not gonna lie. If you're not a doctor, you won't get anything near this because the bank sees you as a threat who will take them down. All right. Anyways, so we have 3 more loans, right? So it's going to be 40 months. So let's do this 40, 44. Hold on. So we have this loan calculator right here where we just put the current month and then it just tells us the current balance of all our loans. So just use the cash flow index again, move the 7 grand the into the line of credit. Let's just do this right here. So plus 7702.44. So this is the amount that the current balance of a loan. So this is 0, and then this is going to be 5 grand, right? So 5 grand, and then I'm just going to do this. All right. So this is going to be 5078.62. And then we still see that it pays off in about 2 months. We just slightly lowered the interest, okay? So I'm going to do this, and it's going to be 42 months. And so now, as a doctor, our $22,000 debt is gone. We're a modest doctor who has we don't have $1 million house, we got a $400,000 house with a $22,000 Toyota Corolla. When I bought my Toyota Corolla, it was like 30 grand. So I'm assuming that if they put a down payment, then it would probably be 22 grand. Assuming, but all right. So 164 plus 22, 186K. Okay. And then this one is the student loan and the mortgage. So now this is 0, and then it's going to be month 42, month 42. By the way, like if you don't know how amortized loans work, there's only 3 factors that affect the payment: the original balance, the interest rate, and the terms. And so the interest, it can only be increased by 2 things, right? The interest rate or the term. Well, what most people don't know is if you increase the term, the payment actually lowers, right? Because small payments over time is how the bank makes money. And that's kind of like their sneaky way of making all this money off of you, because like if you have a 30-year mortgage, the payment's relatively low compared to the balance of the loan, right? All right, so next one here is the student loan, 159,000. You know what? Since the student loan interest rate is comparable to the 8% line of credit interest rate, I feel comfortable moving this into a line of credit. But I wouldn't do that in real life, but for demonstration purposes, I would. So let me go ahead and do that. And so we're going to move the $159,000 in the student loan. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go ahead and do this plus 159,705.84. And then guess what happens? Well, the student loan payment goes to 0. So we get an extra 2,500. So it's now $7,633 of cash flow. So let's go ahead and now keep doing this. I'm going to copy and paste. So minus, right? So minus 7633. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And so this is going to be 65,000, or 65,000, 65 months till it's all paid off, right? So now this is going to be 65 months. Okay. And it's going to be 186 plus 220. So that's 406K in 65 months. And then now in 65 months, what is the current balance? So it's $385,000. Now, here's the thing that where you can really screw this up. Okay, so when it comes to 30-year mortgages, remember you borrow lots of money for little bitty payment. Okay, so if you move this really big loan that's 4% to an 8% line of credit, and you only get itty bitty payment in your cash flow, you're going to end up paying more than you should, right? So you really have 2 choices. One is the default, which is extra payments, and then the second one is called sweeping or chunking, right? HELOC sweeping. So basically, what is that? You take a piece of the loan and move it into the line of credit. Now, if you're extremely disciplined and you can do it, just do the extra payments, because most people can't do that. Because if that's the default option, why doesn't everybody just do extra payments on the mortgage? Well, the reason why they can't is because they're too used to segregating their income, right? So what happens is that when they overpay a loan, right? And then they realize, oh man, this month I paid way too much. Then that's why they start getting out other types of credit. So what we're trying to do with this strategy is to make sure that all of our income stays in one place so we don't segregate our income. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, once you see real life case studies of 22 debts, you'll get what I mean. 99% paywall. Make sure you click that. Okay. All right. So this is how I kind of think about extra payments, which is decision fatigue. You have to really actively think about how much you're going to send as an overpayment to the loan. Whereas if you do this chunking or sweeping method, basically the paycheck goes into the line of credit by default, and all your mindset is that your checking account goes to zero and your line of credit goes to zero, and that's it. And you just do it over and over again, right? So you get more momentum, and it's really easy. So let me just kind of do this right here and show you how this works. So let's say I move, we'll say, I don't know, 13 grand from the loan into the line of credit. Okay, so we're just taking a bite of the principal balance of a small amount. We'll just do 13K here, and then do this plus 13000, and then, oh dude, geez, did this get paid off like in 1 month? I think it did. All right, or did I screw up? Oh, I probably screwed up. Anyways, let me just see this here. So this gets paid off in 2 months. This gets paid. So you see that every 1 or 2 months or so, it just, that 13 grand gets paid off easily. That's another way we can do it too, right? So the first way is you just keep making the monthly payments as a direct overpayment with this $7,633, or you just move into line of credit. So let me just kind of show you here with this calculator how this would demonstrate. It's kind of like a cheat sheet here of what the expected debt payoff would be. So that would be about, where is it? 430,000. So 430. Okay. And what's the current balance? The current balance is, let's take a look here. 385,116.65. So 385.65. And then the interest rate is 4%, 30 years. And then the payment amount is 2052.89. Okay, and then this is going to be 13%. No, it's be 8%. My bad. All right, so you notice I moved it, renamed it to chunk to sweep. Yeah, let me just do this. Okay, so now what's the income? 12685.89. 12685.89. And then the expenses is everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. Okay. All right, so now we see it gets paid off in 3.6 years. Okay, so 3.6 years, and that's pretty much it. So this is 0, and this is going to be 65 divided by 12 plus 3.6, 9.02 years, debt free. Excuse me. And that's about 836K. So 836K of debt. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. So this is a Crane Lanta mentorship. I'm going to keep cranking out videos for doctors, and hopefully one of them will notice me. Right? It's kind of like one of those YouTube videos where it's like I'm gonna make videos until X brand notices me. Right? Notice me, senpai. Notice me. Please notice me, senpai. Notice me. I'm just kidding. Anyways, if you made it to the end of this video and if you want to let me know, just type in, please notice me, senpai. Okay, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video about doctors.